right, on this ellipses homework, we're going to be identifying the center, vertices, covertices, foci, length of the major axis, length of the minor axis, then sketch the graph. I actually find it to be much easier to sketch the graph first and then use that to answer. And let's see how that can help us. I'm going to do number 2. The center is going to be at -4, 3. That's one of the questions it asked us, the center. -4, 3. Remember that both the x and the y coordinate of the center are backwards from what you might think, and that's because they're both in parentheses. So -4, +3, that's the center. This is what I've been calling the x radius, and since a squared equals 9, the x radius is 3. That's not a true math term, but I find it useful here. That the x values of the vertices are 3 away from the center. Y isn't being divided by anything, which means it's being divided by 1. And so b squared equals 1. And so the y radius is 1. Notice that we just take the square root of these numbers each time to find what the x and the y radius are. And now we have our graph. From our graph, we can get all our answers very easily. The vertices are at the end of the major axis. So here's the major axis. And so the vertices are -1, 3 and -7, 3. The covertices are at the end of the minor axis, the closest 2 points together that go through the center. And that's at -4, 4 and -4, 2. The length of the major axis length, is this distance, and that's 6. Notice it's 2 times the x radius, so 3 to the left, 3 to the right, 6 length total. I guess I shouldn't use MA. Minor axis, because both of them have an M, length is 2. And the last question is the foci. The foci are always along the major axis, and remember that the way we find the foci is we do a squared minus b squared. So 9 minus 1 is 8, and we take the square root of that. And this is the distance from the foci away from the center. And so square root of 8 is a little bit less than square root of 9. This is just a little bit less than 3. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 4 is 2. It's a little closer to 3 than to 2. And so I know I have to move 1, 2, and a little bit away. 1, 2, it's almost at the vertices. This is where the foci are. I didn't ask you to label this, but I'm going to. And so the actual point is going to be, if we look at the center, it was at -4, 3, and the foci got added by square root of 8 and subtracted by square root of 8. And so the foci are -4 plus the square root of 8, comma 3, and -4 minus the square root of 8, comma 3. If I were being really pro here, I would want to simplify square root of 8. Square root of 8 is square root of 4 times square root of 2. Square root of 4 is 2. And so 2 times the square root of 2 is square root of 8. And so I could write it as -4 plus 2 square root of 2, comma 3. And similarly for this one, I could simplify. Okay, that's the example I'm going to do there. Getting these into standard form. So what we want to have is we want to have x something squared over something, y something squared over something equals 1. And we don't have that right now. The first thing I'm going to do is I want the x squareds to be positive and the y squared to be positive, and so I'm going to move them over to the other side. 9x squared, and so I'm also going to move the x's with it, minus 18x. And then the y is going to be plus 4y squared minus 16y. We're going to group it just like we did when we were doing circles. We're going to put all the x's together and all the y's together. And we're going to complete the square. We have to factor out the 9 and factor out the 4. And now we can see what square binomial this is going to be. This is going to be 9 times x minus 1 squared. And we know that because these multiply together and double to make this. So you always have to just divide this number by 2 to see what the binomial is going to be. And this one is going to be 4 times y minus 2 squared. Sorry, this is getting a little bit messy. But we have to actually complete the square. And so to make this x minus 1 squared, we square the first one, that's x squared. Multiply these two together and double it, that's minus 2x. But we also have to square the negative 1, and so that's a plus 1. Same here, we have to add 4 here because negative 2 squared is 4. Now we just added those out of nowhere. It may look like we added 1, but this is really a 9 because the 1 is inside of parentheses getting multiplied by 9. And if we add 9 to this side, we're also going to add 9 to the other side of the equation. If we add 16, which is what this is, 4 times 4 is 16, we're also going to add 16 to the other side of the equation. There's another way to do this, which is at the beginning of the year we said, hey, if you add 9, you can subtract 9 to cancel it out. But when we move it to the other side, which is what we would want to do next, we would add 9 to both sides. And so we can save a step by just adding it to the other side. So 324. So this is equal to 324. And since we want it to equal 1, we're going to divide everything by 324. We can divide by 9 and divide by 9, and we'll get 36. And we're going to divide by 4 and divide by 4, and we'll get 81. And we have our square binomials. It's x minus 1 squared, y minus 2 squared. And so this is standard form. I'm going to rewrite it a little bit more cleanly. Plus y minus 2 squared over 81 equals 1. There is the standard form. And the reason we want it in this standard form is we want to be able to graph it. And this will allow us to graph it. The last thing, I think I have time for this one more. We've got vertices and co-vertices. And so if you sketch a quick graph, it doesn't have to be perfect. Negative 1, call this 19. And negative 1, negative 7. Okay. And 3, 6. And we've got negative 5, 6. Notice this is not to scale at all. The 19 should be way higher. The negative 5 should be more to the left. But it can at least show us what's going on here. The center is going to be where the vertices and the co-vertices, that major axis and the minor axis intersect. And so the center is clearly halfway between negative 5 and 3. And if you can't tell exactly what's there, you can average it. Negative 5 plus 3 divided by 2 is how we average those two numbers. That's negative 2 over 2, which is negative 1. The x value of the center is at negative 1. And we've got negative 7 and 19. The center will be halfway in between that. And so we've got negative 7 plus 19 divided by 2. That's how we average two numbers. And that comes out to be 6. So there's our center. And from there, we'll be able to say it's x plus 1 squared, y minus 6 squared. We just have to figure out what it's dividing by. And so from there, what we need is the x radius and the y radius. Well, we're at negative 1 is here, and so it's 4 to the left and 4 to the right. So this is 16. This is positive 6 is the y coordinate of the center. And it goes up to 19 and down to negative 7, and that's 12 in both directions. So 12 squared is 144. All right, hopefully that's helpful. Good luck on the rest of your homework.